In China, every detail surrounding his death vanished within minutes. Articles disappeared, names became forbidden, and yet the whispers never stopped. The first thing that vanished was not the evidence. It was the name. Within minutes of the announcement, any mention of Yu Menglong dissolved into digital nothingness. News articles were taken down. Search results returned empty pages. Social media posts flickered briefly, then disappeared as if they had never existed. In a system built to control narratives, this was not unusual. What was unusual was what followed. Despite the silence imposed from above, fragments began to surface from below. Screenshots preserved before deletion, archived clips, whispered accounts shared in private groups, then quietly passed from one person to another. The harder the story was buried, the more distorted and unsettling it became. What should have faded instead grew darker. We are often told that truth reveals itself with clarity. In this case, it arrived disguised as noise. Before his death, Yu Menglong appeared repeatedly in live broadcasts. The footage, when revisited now, feels unstable. The image shakes, the audio distorts. At the time, viewers dismissed these disruptions as technical failures. A poor connection, a faulty microphone, nothing more. His team can be seen adjusting equipment, apologizing, attempting to restore normality. But in the middle of that confusion, something else occurred. For a brief moment, Yu Menglong lowered the hand that had been covering his mouth. His voice dropped, almost lost beneath the interference. 3 words slipped through, fragmented and faint. "Help me." It was not a dramatic plea. There was no panic in his tone, no raised voice. It sounded almost restrained, as if speaking freely was not an option. The distortion did the rest. The message dissolved into static, unnoticed by nearly everyone watching. Even more troubling, during that same broadcast, Yu Menglong made a small, deliberate movement with his hand. To most viewers, it appeared meaningless, casual, forgettable. But to those familiar with international safety awareness campaigns, it was unmistakable. The signal known as 540, a silent sign used when someone is in danger and cannot speak. The gesture requires precision, the hand raised, the thumb folded inward, the fingers closed slowly over it. In Yu Menglong's case, someone sat close beside him, watching, monitoring. Every motion had to appear natural. The signal was performed subtly, almost invisibly. That subtlety sealed its fate. No one reacted. The stream continued. The moment passed. Only later, replayed frame by frame, did its meaning become horrifyingly clear. He had been asking for help in plain sight, and we did not recognize it. Because he was an actor. Because he was convincing. Because we assumed it was performance. Looking back now, the realization is difficult to escape. His cries for help were never hidden. They were misunderstood, and by the time the truth became visible, he was already beyond reach. Because before he died, he had already asked for help. Repeatedly. The signals did not arrive all at once. They appeared gradually, scattered across time, buried inside moments that seemed ordinary, even trivial. When viewed individually, none of them were enough to raise alarm. Together, they form a pattern that is impossible to ignore. After the live stream where the whispered plea slipped into static, fans began revisiting older footage. What they found was unsettling, not because it was dramatic, but because it was consistent. In broadcast after broadcast, Yu Menglong appeared increasingly constrained. His posture stiffened. His eyes wandered briefly toward someone off camera before returning to the lens. His speech grew cautious, fragmented, as though every sentence had to pass an invisible test before being allowed to exist. There was no visible violence, no open threat, only restraint. During one particular stream, Yu Menglong spoke casually about mundane things. The weather, dark clouds overhead, the suggestion to carry an umbrella. He joked about learning magic tricks, about how death in a strange way could be an art. At the time, viewers laughed. The lines sounded poetic, eccentric, the kind of abstract phrasing audiences expect from artists. What no one noticed was the structure. Later, when fans extracted the first character from each sentence and placed them side by side, the message emerged with chilling clarity. 4 words: Today I die. Not metaphor, not symbolism. A farewell, encoded in plain language, disguised as harmless commentary. It was not meant to be discovered immediately. It was meant to survive. This was not the only time Yu Menglong spoke, as if preparing for an ending. During another appearance, a faint bruise could be seen forming near his forehead. A viewer asked about it, cautiously, almost apologetically. Yu Menglong smiled. The expression did not reach his eyes. He responded calmly, with a composure that now feels rehearsed. If one day I suddenly disappear, remember it will never be an accident. Moments later, the broadcast ended abruptly. The cut was not natural. There was no farewell, no sign-off. The stream simply vanished. Soon after, the entire video was removed from the platform. No explanation followed. For many, it was just another example of routine content moderation. For those watching closely, it marked a turning point. Something had crossed a line. At the time, however, most people did not connect these moments. The assumption was simple. Yu Menglong was an actor. His profession trained him to express emotion convincingly. If something felt unsettling, it was easy to dismiss it as performance. Artistic flair. A role bleeding into reality. That assumption proved fatal. As days passed, Yu Menglong's presence online became erratic. On August 29th, he posted cheerful photos on Weibo. He appeared relaxed, surrounded by friends. The images suggested normalcy, even happiness. But that same day, a private WeChat message surfaced later, leaked by someone within his circle. A friend expressed concern, hinting at danger. Yu Menglong replied quickly, almost urgently. Absolutely nothing is wrong, just live well. I am fine. It is only a few days of makeup filming. Read now, the message feels heavy, not reassuring but protective, as though he was more concerned about shielding others than acknowledging his own fear. On September 2nd, Yu Menglong made what would become his final public post. It promoted a military parade scheduled for the following day. According to widespread reports, the post was mandatory, a directive issued to all mainland celebrities. There was nothing personal in it. No voice, no warmth. After that, his account went silent. The absence was immediate. Fans noticed. Comments flooded in, asking where he had gone. None were answered. Rumors began circulating quietly at first, then louder. Claims that Yu Menglong had been detained, that he was under control, that speaking freely was no longer possible. What makes this period so disturbing is not what was confirmed, but what was missing. No official statement, no denial. No clarification, just disappearance. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. The restrained movements, the coded language, the forced smiles, the careful phrasing of reassurance. Each moment alone could be explained away. Together, they reveal a man attempting to communicate under surveillance, aware that even silence could be interpreted as resistance. His profession became the perfect disguise. When someone trained to perform expresses distress, audiences are conditioned to doubt its authenticity. Real fear is mistaken for acting. Genuine desperation is reduced to narrative flair. In Yu Menglong's case, that misunderstanding bought his captors time. The most unsettling realization comes when we accept this truth. Thousands watched him, thousands listened. The evidence was visible, audible, repeatable. And yet, nothing changed, not because no one cared, but because no one understood what they were seeing. Recognition came too late. The footage, replayed now, no longer feels ambiguous. The patterns are clear, the signals unmistakable, the timeline painfully coherent. But clarity gained after loss offers no rescue, only regret. By the time the public began to see the pattern, Yu Menglong had already crossed the threshold, where survival was no longer in his control. By the time the truth became visible, he was already beyond reach. The transition from absence to captivity was never announced. It unfolded quietly, concealed behind routine gestures and official silence. After September 2nd, when Yu Menglong vanished from public view, no explanation followed. There was no statement from his management, no reassurance from authorities. The void itself became the message. Privately, concern had already taken root. Messages exchanged with friends during those final days reveal a careful balancing act. Yu Menglong acknowledged nothing, denied everything. He urged others to live well, to stay calm, to believe he was safe. In hindsight, the words read less like reassurance and more like a farewell crafted to protect those around him. Fear was swallowed, not erased. Soon, rumors began to surface, first as speculation, then as whispered certainty. Yu Menglong had been taken into custody. Where he was held, by whom, and under what authority remained unclear. What became evident was that his initial detention produced no result. Whatever his captors were searching for, they did not find it. On September 8th, he was moved. The location was a villa in Beijing, secluded, far from the public eye. 17 individuals gathered there that night, including Yu Menglong. Witnesses later described the atmosphere as unnatural. It was not a social event. It felt staged, deliberate, ritualistic. From the moment he entered, his autonomy vanished. He was forced to drink. Substances were introduced. His resistance weakened systematically, chemically, efficiently. By morning, he was transferred again. The new location appeared ordinary. A rental apartment on the 5th floor of Building 18 in the Yangguang Shandong residential complex. Online, however, it acquired a different name. The Sacrifice Room. Long rumored to be a site of abuse, the space carried a reputation heavy enough to precede it. Within those walls, surveillance was constant. Movement was restricted. Time itself seemed to collapse into a single, suffocating stretch. Between September 9th and 10th, the violence escalated. Accounts describe repeated assaults, beatings that left no room for misunderstanding. Acts intended not only to harm, but to humiliate. At some point, Yu Menglong attempted to escape. He reached the parking area before he was caught. The effort failed almost immediately. The punishment that followed was severe. What shattered the last remnants of trust was not the violence itself, but who delivered it. According to leaked testimony and footage, one of the individuals involved was a fellow actor, someone Yu Menglong had known, someone he trusted. In a brief recorded confrontation, his voice breaks through the chaos. "You were the one I trusted most. Why did you lure me into this trap?" The line is devastating in its simplicity. It confirms what many feared. This was not an attack by faceless strangers. It was betrayal from within his own circle. The night of September 10th became decisive. Leaked footage from that night shows Yu Menglong suspended, his body bearing clear signs of prolonged abuse. His fingernails were torn out. His voice, captured in fragments, carried raw disbelief. "All my life I have never endured such humiliation. You are trying to torture me to death. I have had enough of your threats." Then came the moment that sealed his fate. In desperation, he cried out that his hands could no longer hold on. Moments later, he was pushed from a window. He fell, striking the grass below. Against all odds, the fall did not kill him. Gravely injured, broken, but alive, he remained conscious. For a brief moment, survival offered the illusion of possibility. That illusion did not last. He was dragged back inside. The next phase unfolded on the 6th floor. His captors believed that Yu Menglong had swallowed a USB drive containing evidence. Evidence tied to money laundering. Evidence that could not be allowed to surface. In an audio recording that later emerged, a voice issues a single command: "Hurry up." The urgency leaves no doubt. Retrieval was prioritized over life. What followed defies comprehension. Reports claim that his abdomen was cut open while he was still alive. The act was not accidental. It was deliberate, a calculated attempt to extract information by force. Witnesses alleged that the same colleague who betrayed him earlier was present during this act. Online, the public would later assign him a name filled with bitter irony: Dr. Fan. The brutality did not end there. Another individual present changed Yu Menglong's clothes, attempting to conceal the blood and bruises. The effort suggests awareness, not of guilt, but of consequence. For the second time, Yu Menglong was thrown. This time from the 6th floor. There was no miracle waiting below. He struck the ground. His life ended in silence. What remains is not just the horror of his final hours, but the structure behind them. Every movement coordinated, every location chosen, every participant fulfilling a role. This was not chaos, it was procedure. Surviving the first fall did not spare him. It merely extended the process. His brief survival became an inconvenience that had to be corrected. Surviving the fall did not save him. It only gave them more time. When the news finally broke, it did not arrive as an official statement. It emerged as fragments, screenshots, blurred images. A handful of sentences passed between private accounts before being erased. What followed was not clarification, but erasure. Almost immediately, every reference to Yu Menglong's name began disappearing from Chinese platforms. Search results collapsed into emptiness. Keywords became forbidden. Silence was enforced not as absence, but as policy. Yet the internet does not forget as easily as it is ordered to comply. In the early hours of September 20th, something unexpected occurred. The comment section of an official state media account, long locked, was briefly reopened. Within hours, tens of thousands of messages poured in. Nearly all carried the same demand. Open a case. Investigate fully. Give justice to Yu Menglong. Similar floods appeared across government websites, cultural bureaus, judicial portals, each page overwhelmed with pleas, prayers, and anger. Then, as if rehearsed, everything vanished. The comments were wiped clean, pages refreshed into silence. It was a familiar pattern, executed with mechanical precision. What made this moment different was not the censorship itself, but the scale of the response it attempted to suppress. The harder the story was buried, the more aggressively it resurfaced. The question that refused to disappear was simple. Why would a young actor, known for refusing industry excess, be destroyed with such brutality? The answer, many believe, lies beyond personal conflict. It points instead to a system designed to convert fame into cover. In the shadowy corners of the Chinese entertainment industry, money laundering is not an anomaly. It is infrastructure, production budgets inflated beyond reason, box office numbers manipulated, contracts split into dual versions, one presented publicly, another hidden, funneling profits into accounts beyond scrutiny. This system requires names, faces, public credibility. Celebrities become assets not only on screen, but on paper. Investigators and online analysts later uncovered a disturbing detail. Under Yu Menglong's name existed a registered company tied to an investment field entirely unrelated to entertainment, military fire investment. The discovery raised immediate questions. He had no known involvement, no background, no motive, and he was not alone. Multiple celebrities associated with the same talent show were found to have similar companies registered under their identities. All shared identical contact details, the same address, the same phone number. It suggested coordination, a single controlling hand. If Yu Menglong had discovered evidence connecting his identity to this network, the consequences would have been inevitable. Evidence does not need to be public to be dangerous. Its mere existence becomes a threat. According to persistent rumors, that threat took the form of a USB drive. Portable, concealable, irreplaceable. Among the names linked to this web, one drew particular attention. A powerful investor with political ties, connected to factions long rumored to profit from industries operating beyond public oversight. The implications extended far beyond entertainment. They reached into finance, into influence, into protection. Within such a structure, accountability is not enforced through law. It is managed through removal. Yu Menglong's death, viewed through this lens, no longer appears isolated. It resembles a familiar pattern. Individuals who know too much disappear. Bodies are cremated before autopsies. Official causes are issued quickly. Heart disease, accidents, sudden illness. The record closes. The system continues. What makes Yu Menglong's case different is not the mechanism, but the exposure. Too many fragments escaped containment. Too many people noticed. Too many patterns aligned. His life and death became a mirror reflecting a truth many had long suspected, but rarely confronted. That success and innocence offer no protection when power demands silence. This was not simply an industry scandal. It was a demonstration. A warning delivered with excessive force. When privilege shields crime, morality becomes irrelevant. Talent becomes disposable. Human life becomes collateral. The public response revealed something else as well. A fracture in belief. Younger generations, often dismissed as apathetic, were among the most vocal. They preserved data, shared archives, lit virtual candles. They understood that forgetting was the final step in erasure. Memory, in this context, became resistance. As these revelations spread, names were spoken openly. Accusations circulated. Discussions intensified. None were officially acknowledged. All were officially denied by silence. But denial does not neutralize doubt. It amplifies it. When all threads are pulled together, a larger picture emerges. Yu Menglong's death may not have been the objective. It may have been the byproduct of a system reacting violently to exposure, a system that required his silence, not because of who he was, but because of what he knew, or what he represented. In that sense, the crime was not the act itself. It was everything that followed. The deletions, the refusals, the systematic dismantling of public discourse. His death became a cover, under which a greater structure remained intact. And that realization carries a final, unsettling weight. His death was not the crime. It was the cover-up. In the aftermath, grief did not arrive quietly. Images of Yu Menglong's mother collapsing under the weight of loss circulated briefly before disappearing, like everything else connected to his name. The pain was raw, unfiltered, and unmistakably human. A single family torn apart by forces far beyond their reach. A young life extinguished with such precision that even mourning became an act subject to deletion. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. What followed was not closure, but awakening. Yu Menglong's story did not fade as intended. It multiplied. Each erased post produced 10 new copies. Each silenced account inspired others to speak. Candle icons appeared across timelines. Screenshots replaced headlines. Memory adapted when official record refused to exist. This was never just about an actor. It was about the quiet understanding that if someone so careful, so restrained, so visibly non-confrontational, could be destroyed, then no one was truly protected. The case struck a nerve because it exposed a fear shared by millions. That ordinary people, without powerful backing, could be crushed simply for being in the wrong place, within the wrong system. That talent, discipline, and integrity offer no immunity when they interfere with profit. Yu Menglong's life had followed a modest arc. He refused excess. He avoided compromise. When pressured, he stepped back rather than submit. He survived years of obscurity without resentment. He studied. He taught children. He rebuilt himself quietly. When opportunity returned, he accepted it with humility. Nothing in his public life suggested ambition dangerous enough to justify such an end. And yet, that was precisely the point. Systems built on exploitation do not fear aggression. They fear refusal. They fear evidence. They fear those who cannot be easily bent. In such environments, silence is not the absence of noise. It is the product of force. The reaction to Yu Menglong's death revealed something unexpected. Despite censorship, despite deletion, despite the machinery designed to discourage dissent, people remembered. Younger voices, often dismissed as distracted or apathetic, preserved what they could. They understood that forgetting was the final violence. To remember was to resist. Justice, in this case, remains unresolved. No public trial, no transparent investigation, no official accountability. But justice does not exist solely within courtrooms. Sometimes it survives elsewhere, in archives saved by strangers, in stories passed quietly between communities, in the refusal to let a name vanish. Yu Menglong's death became more than a tragedy. It became a measure, a test of whether truth can endure without permission, whether memory can outpace erasure, whether a system dependent on silence can withstand collective remembrance. The question now is not what happened. Enough fragments exist to suggest a reality far darker than any official explanation. The question is whether remembering is enough, whether holding on to a story denied by power can still matter. History suggests it can, because long after documents are destroyed and records rewritten, stories persist. They shift, they adapt, they wait, and when the moment arrives, they return. Justice does not begin in courtrooms. Sometimes it begins with remembering a name they tried to erase.